double check this. Yes, we are running. Okay. Well, we are meeting on Tuesday, February, we'll edit that out. We're meeting on Tuesday, May 15th, and I'm meeting with Roger Parker, a longtime member of Oak Grove. And we welcome you, Roger, and we're enthused about hearing all your memories of Oak Grove long ago. So, to begin with, maybe you could tell me a little bit about your family and whether you lived in Bloomington or whereabouts you lived and where they came from.
Mine is a kind of a unique thing. I was 7 days old when my biological mother died.
Oh.
So I had 5 brothers and sisters, but they stayed on the farm, and my mother's sister and brother-in-law took me then and then raised me.
Oh.
So it was kind of interesting to know that these cousins suddenly were your brothers and sisters.
Oh,
But,
yes.
So it was a unique, in a way, growing up. You know, I grew up as an only child, but then had contact.
One of 6, yeah.
I'm a Minneapolis kid.
Mm-hmm.
I lived all my life in Minneapolis or here in Bloomington.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was self-employed, had a service station. So we kind of, I'm a depression kid.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kind of moved. Dad did a wonderful job to see that we had good housing and stuff. But we just kind of moved around a little bit. So when we went, I remember the first church that I remember was the Lindale Congregational, 31st and Bryant. And it was just across the street, so we went there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved over by Roosevelt High School, and so then we went to a Lutheran church.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was interesting that, or at least to me, if this is the city block, we lived on the corner. Lake Nokomis Presbyterian was up here. And Bob Long lived here about the 4 houses over.
Oh, really?
And his dad was pastor at that time.
Did you know him?
Oh, yeah, we played together.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
He used to smoke in the bushes in front of my house.
We'll edit that out.
But he said to me one day, this was 16th Avenue, and he said, we 16th Avenue kids turned out okay. But I remember there, and that's when I really have most memories of being involved, singing in the children's choir and all those things. Well, then we moved out here to South Minneapolis, and there wasn't really a church that was close. My mother really wanted me to go to Mount Olive, and but then it was during the war years, so I got a job when I was, in my teens, and working for Bachman's, and so the weekends were always, we worked.
Oh, yeah.
And Saturdays and Sundays. So I missed out on confirmation and some of those things that a lot of you, took part in. So, and how I got really involved in the Presbyterian churches, my first year at the university, the fellow that sat right next to me in this one class, he kept saying to me, you got to come to my youth group. And I kept saying, no. And it went on for a couple of years. And finally I went one night, Sunday night, and boy, this was a fun group.
And where was that now?
That was at Oliver Presbyterian Church, South Minneapolis.
Okay.
And so they were wonderful people. I still get together with them on a regular basis.
Really?
Over 60 years.
Wow.
And that's how I became involved in the church, and and so forth. In fact, that's where my wife and I met,
Mhm.
and were later married
At Oliver?
at Oliver. And so my roots go back there. I started in the choir, and kind of the roots go there.
Mhm.
But of course, then I worked all through my college days at Bachman's. So my association with Oak Grove, 1946, October, Fred and Inez Pond, I decorated the old stucco church for their wedding.
Uh-huh.
And who'd have thought that I would come out here then eventually
You'd be a member.
and be a member.
Yeah.
But I have vivid memories of that, of the church,
Uh-huh.
and how good the sanctuary was. There's a couple of pictures that gel with me
Uh-huh.
quite a bit. And then I remember then in the days when Bloomington was just kind of sprouting, you know, the early 50s, we'd come out here to deliver packages. And I remember driving by when we built what I call the 50s church.
Mhm.
That's at
The sanctuary,
there.
yes.
And I remember and I remember seeing Ed Knudsen on the tractor moving dirt around.
Yes. Yes, that would be characteristic.
That would be if I, you know, yeah.
I
So of course, then, you know, we were involved at Oliver and so forth. And so then we married, and our son was born. And how we landed out here was, well, it was a long way to drive in to Minneapolis.
Yes.
And he was 2. And the pastor would kind of talk awfully long. And then he would be asleep from church to home,
Mhm.
and then be crabby all that Sunday afternoon.
Oh, yeah. So you lived out here first then?
Yeah, we moved out here, and then about a year and a half later,
Ah.
we decided no. So we went to the pastor and said, no, we have to find a church closer.
Mhm.
So we had come out here, and I think I had come at 9:30, and then Ruth and I came with David at 11, and we kind of went back and forth between the 2 services. And but a friend of mine, the same one that invited me to Oliver, he said, I want you to go to this Baptist church, which is now the Unitarian Church on Zenith.
Oh.
And so we went and we tried the Baptist church for a while, but it was just too small. Well, actually, we got to the point about talking about membership,
Mhm.
and the pastor said you have to be rebaptized,
Oh.
because otherwise you have to be immersed.
Oh.
And I said, it isn't going to happen.
Mhm.
So then we started coming here with more regular, and we joined in August of 1961.
Mhm.
And stuff. And I remember, you know, then getting to know Ed Knudsen, Reverend Ed, you know, and I think what was really one of the really major things for us was getting involved right away with the youth, the Sunday night
Uh-huh.
fellowship that we had. And, well, you were a part of that.
I was, and I
And,
remember you and Ruth.
We used to have,
Fondly.
oh, and, well, you know, we had those 4 couples.
Now, who were
The
the 4
Langas.
couples?
The Langas, the Branscoms, us, and there was one other couple, I could tell you where they lived, but do you think I can think of their name?
Oh.
Betty Johnson was the one that could always tell me what their name was. They had the first name was Carol. But anyway, we got involved, and boy, you meet people so quickly then, because suddenly, you know, you got the families of these 50 young people.
Yes, 50 young people.
We used to have 50 for junior high,
Wow.
and another 50 for senior high.
Whoa.
And we had about 25, 30 that were pretty regular coming. And the parents then would fix a Sunday night supper.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we'd eat and then we'd have our time together. And my first trip to Clearwater, February 1962, 50 of you, we took to Clearwater.
We sure did.
And of course, the leaders at that time, Jack Roddy, Fred Pond, Gene Mickelson, Dick Hiltney, they were the 4 Sunday school teachers at the 9:30 service. But one little thing that, because we would come at 9:30 and then we would come at 11, and when we joined, and then David was going to be 3 in that fall. So he got a letter from, I think, your mother.
Oh, probably.
She was teaching 3-year-olds
yeah.
and telling him that he was going to be in the 9:30 service,
Oh.
or Sunday school.
Uh-huh.
I got a letter telling me I was going to be in the 11 o'clock Sunday school. And that was from my name's Pond.
And so you were here all day.
Well, you know, actually, as it would happen, the choir would sing and then excuse themselves before the sermon.
Ah.
And then we would go and some would have a smoke and some would just hang out. And then we'd stay for the whole 11 o'clock service.
Ah.
So I went to Fred and Jack and Gene and I said, "What can I do to help you?" "Worship." I said, "All right, I'll be ready every time in the chapel here and I'll have the worship that's ready for you.
Uh-huh.
And all I ask is that you guys, I'll knock on the door, you have 2 people for me." And then I had all the young people that wanted to or could play.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I did.
Yes.
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 Mary Chadwick and I.
And I'd say, "We'll sing whatever you can sing."
That's right.
I don't care. It doesn't matter to me what that little red hymnal that we had and stuff. And of course the organ
The organ was right over there. Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, that was the most, between that and then being able to sing in the choir, we suddenly got to know so many people here local. And you know, I think about that because what a way, getting involved right away.
Yes.
And suddenly meeting all the you wonderful young people and then their families and then the choir. Suddenly you were just a part of the group.
You know, one of my earliest memories of you and Ruth and David is when my parents had you over for dinner one day after church.
Uh-huh.
And we took pictures, and I still have pictures
Really?
of you and Ruth and little David standing there on the sidewalk outside the house. That was really fun
Oh,
to get to know you that way.
well, yeah, that's the way, you know, it just began to happen that, you know, you immediately got those associations and that wonderful time together. And I remember, I call them the trio. It was Mary Chadwick, Sharon Burgesson, or Matson Burgesson, and Carol Fruley.
Yes.
Those 3 were just like glue.
Uh-huh.
And I remember that they just took my son in, and whenever there was a chance, they were there at the services, and he was just, they took care of him.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. But, you know, the Fruley kids, Jan and Carol, and the Clark kids, and then you, and the Brickies, and all these young people. Dave Roddy was in that group,
Tom
and Tom Goodrich, and Tom Howlett, and stuff, you know, and you talked about getting us fast acquainted. And that makes such a difference, because if you don't get acquainted soon, it's easy to kind of slip out and stuff.
Yeah.
So I have wonderful fond memories of that first group, especially that first group, because they were,
We're recording.
and stuff. So, but it just then, we began to be more and more aware. You know, I worked for a long time with the junior church until when Doyle Hanson came in 67, and he wanted to have the young people in church. So then we pretty well dropped having junior church. But then I was in the choir with Ford and Luther, Ritchie, Marie Niles, and that whole crew, Steve and Audrey, the Augustins, and so just had so many ways in which we could. I remember the first time they said I was going to sing a duet with Dora Blake.
Oh.
Well, I didn't sleep that night because her voice was, so beautiful.
Angelic.
And stuff. But, there was no more wonderful, warm person than she was.
She was.
Oh, she was just a peach. She told me one day, she said, all you others have so many other talents. She said, all I can do is just sing. And I thought, yeah, right.
And you sing like an angel.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and stuff. And
you enjoyed choir a lot. I remember hearing you sing lots when I was growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And,
That first Easter then, we did the 7 last words, and Ruth asked me to do the tenors. And I remember Rip and Ed coming at the end and saying, this is the first time we haven't had to hire a soloist.
Oh.
We could do it with all our own people.
So you sang tenor, and then Dora, I presume?
Dora sang, yeah.
And then who were the others?
And then Gordy Augustin, that time Gordy Augustin took the baritone part.
Oh.
And then the next time I did Steve St. Martin did the baritone part and stuff. So, the choir, we've always had a good choir here.
Yes.
And it's been one of the things music has been really good. And of course then getting to know Reverend Ed, and then we'd have the Thursday mornings men's prayer breakfast, only we'd fix it. Remember, we'd have the tile floor in the fireside room.
Yes.
And then we could plug in the electric fry pans.
Oh,
and
you fixed it right in the fireside room?
In the fireside room.
I didn't know
And did
that.
everything right there.
Oh, what did you fix then?
Oh, scrambled eggs. Ruth would make a cinnamon roll that everybody would just, if they knew I was going to bring it, we'd always get a good attendance. But everybody would come and fix, something and stuff. And so we always have, just a nice little breakfast and stuff.
So that prayer breakfast has been going on for a long, long time.
Yeah, that was in the 60s, when we were doing that. And then once in a while we'd go out and have a picnic at Masonic Home. And we'd go out there. And
so you were involved with the youth program and with choir. What was your first involvement with deacons or session or being on a church board?
Well, it was just a couple of years after we joined, they asked me to go on the deacons. And so I was on with Belle St. Martin and Alice, what can I think of it? Bailiff.
Alice Bailiff.
And then I did, that was my first stint with the deacons and stuff.
What did the deacons do back then? Was it at all similar to what they do now?
It was a lot like we're doing. We would call, we would, make sure to go to the family if there was any kind of a need. I remember Ruth even help, the ladies sometimes would help with the ironing if somebody was needing a sick
Really?
and things, yeah.
Wow.
And for a while there, we had what we call little kind of clusters.
Mhm.
And we'd be sure that in that each cluster there was a deacon.
Mhm.
And then you'd kind of be responsible for those members that lived around you
Oh,
to be the listening in the ears
yes.
and you know, tell what was happening. And another way to kind of develop closeness and also watchfulness and stuff. The Oliver Church where it came from, they always had deacons were for a couple,
Oh.
so that they would then do the calling, you know, it was a couple. And of course, I'm of the era that we weren't smart enough to have ladies, elders
Oh.
yet. So in a lot of sense, a lot of the, here, a lot of the deacons were ladies.
Mhm.
I think I was kind of in the minority. It wasn't even 9 and 9, or it
Yeah.
was either 6
Yeah.
and 6.
That was my recollection, that
Yeah,
elders were usually men, or
Mhm.
in some cases before about the mid-60s, I guess.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were always men.
yeah, yeah. It was
And then
always-
the deacons were usually
yeah.
ladies, and then.
And, see, then I was with your dad, and that was my first exposure to be on a pastor search committee.
Oh,
And your dad and Ed Chadwick and Tom, Art Howlett, and Norval Hodgson, and Steve St. Martin, and we were the ones that called Reverend Hansen.
ah,
And he was the one who, up until that time, we'd only had communion quarterly.
right. I
And he
remember
said,
that.
no, he'd like to do it once a month.
Ah, so that's when it changed.
That's when that started.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And yeah, that was a tremendous experience to be on a call committee, and particularly with that group of you know, the men of the church that have been here for years.
Mhm.
You know, I remember in talking with Steve St. Martin, I remember when the deacon, or the elders were, there was only 6. Then when I went on, the first time it was 12. And then later on, we changed it to 18, just so that we'd have enough people to get the work done.
Right.
Yeah,
Do you remember anything about the Board of Trustees? Was that
Yes.
still
yeah,
in operation
Yeah.
when you,
yeah. It was during that time then when Reverend Hansen, that we did away with the Board of Trustees, but they were the ones that were, like the buildings and grounds and the maintenance of the building and things like that. And then they decided that the elders would be part of also the corporation,
right.
if you would, yeah, yeah. So, but no, I remember, yeah, because some people would, well, I'm a trustee, does that mean I have the same duties or rights and responsibilities as an elder? And you'd have to explain, no,
Mhm.
they're 2 different offices
Right.
and stuff. So, yeah, I remember when they were on and stuff.
So what else do you remember about pastors? You mentioned Doyle Hansen, and do you have some other fond memories
Oh,
about
I do.
some of the others?
Well, of course, Reverend Hansen, I remember his candidating sermon, I mean, how he introduced. He said, I'm here, and he says, I'm nervous because I'm candidating for this job. But he says, I'm not as nervous as the committee because they don't know what I'm going to say. And I remember a couple of people said to me, I don't know if I like him. And I said, well, what's the matter? Well, I used to be able to get my crossword puzzle done, but now he keeps me so interested I haven't got time to work on it. And he was, I remember some sermons. I remember particularly the one that we had been away because we remodeled
Yes.
the 50s building. And we were gone for a year.
We were at St. Edward's.
We were at St. Edward's, and that itself was quite a thing.
Yes, it
And-
was.
Because Father Dudley, he said to Doyle, those two really had a wonderful partnership. And he said, I want to slide two masses apart
Mhm.
so that you can be here at 10 in the morning.
Mhm.
So you don't have to come at 6 or 1 in the afternoon.
Mhm.
And just think of that, he slid two masses so we could worship there at 10
Yeah.
in the morning. And it was a wonderful experience,
Oh, yes.
and
Yes.
for both of us. But I remember that, we were getting close to being done. And Doyle said, what's the chances of our being able to be in there and have our first service on Sunday? I said, well, the pews won't all be in place,
Mhm.
but I said, we can put up folding chairs, and I'm sure some wouldn't mind sitting on the floor. Well, in his thinking mind, it was the first Sunday of the month in March, communion.
Mhm.
And I remember we gathered, we rang the bell, and he said, when you live on a farm, you always have some way of calling the people.
Mhm.
We're calling the people home
Oh.
to
Mhm.
feast at the Lord's table.
Uh-huh. So that would have been March
March of 1972.
1972.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that.
Hmm.
His thoughtfulness of putting it together.
Mhm.
He did that in so much of his sermon work. Well, then when he left, then Dave Kitchell came, and of course he was our educator. He was our camper. So I remember all the things I did with Dave. Working at Clearwater, going every summer for a week with the kids.
Mhm.
The first year we went up there, we had our whole crew were from Oak Grove. The cooks, Ruth was part of the cooking, Betty Egerberg, Dorothy Beatty, Richie. My son went along, did waterfront.
Mhm.
We did our own crafts. We had 80 young people, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. 120 would sit down and give me up.
Mhm.
And
So that was in the late
74,
Oh, 74.
74.
Because
Yeah.
I worked up there, I was a camp counselor a couple of years during the 70s.
Okay,
And
okay.
with Karen Copeland.
Oh,
And,
okay. See, Reverend Ed was also the camper.
yes.
So I remember going up and working for a work week with him. But then there was a period of time when Doyle wasn't really the camper,
Mhm.
but Dave was. And then, and that expanded, for 8 or 9 years.
Oh, we were including Stillwater Church.
Yeah, yeah.
And House of Hope.
As our numbers dropped here, we had the Burnsville Church, Church of the Apostles,
Ah.
and then Stillwater.
Uh-huh.
In fact, one year, Bill Chadwick and I co-directed
Ah.
and stuff, and stuff. But those were those years of the camping. You talk to a lot of our adults now. They have my daughter especially has wonderful memories of going to Clearwater
Mhm.
and stuff.
It's a special place.
It
It
is.
still
It
is.
still is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I just was thinking this year when I was there for men's retreat,
Mhm.
50 years
Yeah,
since I first time up there,
That's
and how
right.
it's changed
yeah.
and stuff. But of course, the church grew then. I've often thought, I wondered what the membership was when I joined, when Ruth and I joined. We had to be around 800. Well, we went to about 1,500.
Mhm.
And that's when we had the Bethel Bible service here.
Yes, I remember that.
And, you know, when I think about it now, 6 classes of 30 each, meeting on a Thursday night for Bible study.
For an entire year. Or
2
2 years, that's right. It was 2 years,
program,
wasn't it?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and stuff. And I was involved in that. I took the training with Reverend Kitchell, and then went ahead and taught and stuff. I think that's been one of the things that I've really enjoyed, is the times that I've been able to do teaching here.
Mhm.
You know.
I think you're a natural. Speaking from experience, I remember, I remember you in the Sunday school days.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, of course, you know, all the different classes that I've been able to take part in, you know, the confessions and the Book of Order and the Presbyterian Seal, and to break those down. I always do a Latin class and an Advent class and stuff. And those were very, well, you know, as a teacher, that you learn more than you are able to share.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, very
And stuff.
definitely.
Yeah. And then there was a period of time there when we went to a Wednesday night program, Eddie Johnson. This was in the 60s yet. And it turned out we were going to have the move choir ahead to 6:30 at night, and I said I was going to teach junior highs. So I stepped out of the choir and then was gone for a while.
Mhm.
And it was when Judy Cooper came and was going to be our choir director, and she said, I'm going to be the new director there. I expect to see you on Wednesday night. That's 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, 25 years ago. Well, you know, there was, you know, the choir group, and then, of course, our Mod Mid program here, you know, that really created some wonderful friendships. And then even after Dave left the ministry, then he began to take those tours.
Mhm.
And I think I took 5 with him.
Did you? Where
Yeah.
did you go?
The first one, we called it the Baltic Bash, and we did the history around Martin Luther.
Oh.
So we tracked East and West Germany at that time, and Czechoslovakia, following where Luther would have gone.
Mhm.
Then in a couple of years, we went and we did the Scandinavian countries. Then we didn't go for a while. Dave, we got all excited about a trip to Alaska, and we didn't.
Mm.
And so he kind of got mad at us.
Oh.
Yeah, he did. And so then somebody said, Dave, when are you going to run another trip? And he says, well, if you guys can agree where you want to go, I'll do it. Well, then we did England, the
Oh,
British
yeah.
Isles. And then we did France
Mhm.
and stuff. And then, but wonderful trips and stuff. And but the way that whole group, you know, bonded, you know, well now, you know, there's still a core group here.
Mhm.
The Mod Mids now have become what was the old in-betweeners
Right, right.
and stuff.
Yeah.
I asked Ed Chadwick one time, I said, what does in-betweener mean? And he said, we're in between the cradle and the grave.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's where the name came from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and stuff.
Hmm.
And of course, that, you know, that's the other part of Oak Grove, is not only what we've done here as a faith community, but the friendships and the people that we have met in the history. I remember going around in the car with Ed Chadwick one day, and Well, we used to own that farm and we used to have that and, I mean, my gosh, it's like a travelogue in Bloomington and stuff.
It's fascinating.
Oh,
It is.
so much history
Yeah,
here.
yeah, within the church and within Bloomington. It's
Oh,
just a
yeah,
Very,
yeah.
very interesting
Well,
area.
You know, to live 50-plus years in one place, that's, not a lot of people do that.
That's right.
So we've seen all the changes here in their community from what it, you know, started out as and how it's progressed
Mhm.
and opening schools and closing schools. I remember one year we opened 12 schools one year
That's right.
and then we had to cut back.
Mhm.
Now we kept some of them and so we're reusing them again.
Mhm.
And we have some crowding, I know, in some of our schools over on the east
Yeah,
side
we do.
and stuff.
It just shifts and changes
Yeah,
periodically.
yeah.
I'm interested to know what things you remember about, say, building funds or building campaigns or special events that have been held here, or memorable weddings or
I
funerals.
remember the first year that we were then between pastors. Reverend Knudsen had left, and then we got to the point where we called Doyle. Well, we decided on a stewardship campaign, and here his father-in-law had written the material.
Really?
Yeah. Marge's dad had written the material for the stewardship
On how to do
campaign.
a good
Yeah.
stewardship campaign.
And
Huh?
we raised the budget from 60,000 to 80,000 that year. $20,000. Now, that was something for 1967
Yeah, I guess.
and stuff, but, yeah, but we gave her full treatment, yeah, and stuff. When we did what I call the 72 church, it was only 325,000 to remodel. But, well, what had happened was that we were filling the church okay for two services, 9:30 and 11. And Doyle came, and very shortly after, we suddenly had to go to 3 services.
Mhm.
So we were given the mandate, and I was on that building committee, and we were given the mandate to go from 250 seats to double to
Oh.
500.
Oh.
And that's what we did then with that floor plan.
Was there ever any talk about changing the location? About selling this area or this land and moving to a different area? Did that ever come up?
You know, I think I've always felt in a sense that if we'd have bought Brookside School, what an ideal location that would have
Yeah,
been.
I know a
with
lot of
land.
people have mentioned that
and
over the
stuff.
years.
But,
Yeah.
and we did at one time have some dialogue with Mount Hope.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Over on Old Shakopee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just never gelled.
Mhm.
We've always had a parking situation here. But years, when I first came, you could park on Old Shakopee.
Yeah,
There was the triangular piece out here in the center
right.
where the Christmas tree used to be,
Yep.
and we could park around that.
Yeah.
And then we could park at the old coal yard.
Yard, yes.
You know, so we had ways of kind of getting around it.
Yeah, we did.
But now we're more boxed in, of course, and stuff. So that's one of the things that we've always dealt with here, is parking and stuff. Of course, now we're a smaller congregation, but 525, 35, whatever it is, instead of that 1,500 that we were there in the 70s and stuff. But there was no real big push.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but I
Yeah.
couldn't remember.
And when I think of the history of getting here,
Mhm.
and sliding the old church up on those two big timbers and dragging them across the fields.
Yeah, in the mud.
Yeah, yeah, to get that
Yeah,
here.
there is something about this land, this piece
And,
of
and,
earth.
and, you know, it is visible, there's no question,
is.
you know, with the, you know, old Shakopee and stuff here, you know.
Old
it's-
Shakopee and Penn,
Yeah.
very much
If,
visible.
if you're over on 102nd and Xerxes, for instance, you're kind of off the main, not that they can't survive,
Yeah, but
but it's not like being on 84th in France or down the road here where St. Louis is.
right,
I remember St. Louis being there for years,
yeah,
in the early 50s.
yes, it was.
And stuff. And stuff. I remember that corner, you know, they banked it just so that it was kind of a little bit of a speed temptation there. Because it was nice to travel, you know, where
You
the,
mean where 98th comes?
yeah, when you go
and
by
Old
the church and you
Shakopee,
kind of
yeah.
slide around that
Yeah.
corner there, yeah, that was kind of nice. And but, no, you know, it's never really gelled. And well, now there just isn't, I don't know what's going on with Mount Hope. They're struggling,
Are they?
yeah. They've kind of had their ups and downs, but they're hanging on to their building
Mhm.
and stuff.
Well, Brookside, I know, is really,
Brookside would have been, you know, what the Covenant Church has done there is, and then there's parking and,
but now they've lost Minnehaha Academy, so
oh,
they're really
they have.
hurting. Yeah, they've got a big for rent sign up
Oh,
there.
really?
The preschool is still there.
Oh,
But
They lost the
Minnehaha,
academy.
yeah, they
Oh.
lost that, so that's made a difference.
interesting.
Well, let's see, we've talked about just about everything. What do you consider to have been watershed moments in the history of the church? Or,
Say it again.
Important milestones since you've been here?
I've always personally, and this was part of it when Doyle came, he wanted us to be a connectional church, connected with Presbytery
Mhm.
and involved. I remember he got me on a committee of Presbytery right away, and we, it was just the year after he came, 1968, when General Assembly was here.
Ah,
And we were down
oh,
preparing the communion elements
uh-huh,
and everything for that big communion service.
that was a big deal.
Oh, I remember being able to serve to the people on the stage at the old auditorium.
Mhm.
But I think the things that we have done, not just be just the church, but we're involved in the larger church
Mhm.
with our members on committees and things like that. And that's something I personally take a lot of, I'm glad that we do.
Yes.
We're a part of the larger.
Mhm.
I feel Oak Grove has done a good job to address the social issues of the days as we've been along.
Mhm.
I remember how in the 60s when Martin Luther King was killed, and we were then asked by Presbytery if we'd be involved up in North Minneapolis to stand on the street corners and prevent some rioting. I remember
Really?
Red Pond and Ralph James, and I can't remember some of the others, but they went up there and stood all night
Really?
to kind of see that we could keep peace.
Oh.
But we've had a good blend of those things. When the Confession of 67 came out, I know we weren't afraid to speak, but then also to embrace these new things.
Mhm.
I just think of how progressive we are in our thinking
Mhm.
and stuff.
Well, I think about homework connection,
Oh,
when you say progressive in our thinking, and wasn't that
It was all, they call it the Oak Grove model.
That's what I thought, and you've
Yeah.
been active in that since
I've
the
been 6
beginning,
years.
haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about Homework Connection and what your involvement has been.
Well, Homework Connection is what we, thanks to our teachers here, they saw a need within the school for children who, for many, many reasons, are unable to get the help at home. So they developed this program where, and what we did in the early years, we had that large community room downstairs, so brought the kids here. And we'd have 30, 40 kids. And we'd spend the time then working with their individual homework from 3 different schools. And then we'd always have some time for them to have some play time too, you know. And when I say play time, I mean, I didn't think about it at the time, but you know, playing a board game, you gotta learn to read, you gotta learn to count, you gotta learn the discipline of playing the game. I mean, there's a lot that's taught,
Oh, yes.
that's taught just playing a board game.
Yeah.
So, we went that way for a while. Well then, the cost of transportation and some other things, plus we had to then, you know, hire the bus and take and deliver the kids, and it made an awfully long day for the kids.
Yes.
They weren't getting home till 5:30. And so we worked then with the district, so we now go to the school. I go to the school. So the kids come at 3, they're done by 4.
Yeah.
And that works out just fine. And I know that the kids they're tired by that time. But the school that I'm at over at Indian Mounds, we have about 45% of the student population is students of color. So I know this year I had 2 families where the child spoke English, but the parents don't. And you've experienced that,
Oh,
you know,
yes.
from your teaching days. So when Junior comes home and says, I need help with this problem, Mom and Dad just are not able.
Right.
And stuff. So we're there, as somebody said to me, well, what do you help them with? Anything they need help with? I might be listening to them practice with speech, or I might be doing math tables. It's just whatever they need help with. And it's working well. The kids are getting that little extra help. Yesterday was the last day for this school year, and I've had this one boy now for 3 years. And Mom came up to me and specifically wanted to thank me.
Oh, how nice.
And stuff. So, I've always said we do more than just teach 4 + 4.
Oh, yes.
We build relationships. And I've experienced what you've experienced, that a couple of years later you just run into these kids in the grocery store or wherever, and they remember.
Oh, yes.
They remember and stuff. So it's a very good program, and it's really grown since we have it now in quite a few of the schools. But and I think they're even trying some way to do it in the middle schools. That's what this mother said to me yesterday. She said, is there something like this? The son is going to be going to Valley View Middle School. And I said, you know, I'm not sure. But it would be nice if there was something that they could further and stuff. But it's been a very successful program. But in talking with staff at the district office, they call it the Oak Grove model.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what we kind of put together as a plan.
well, we've been instrumental in Veep and Cornerstone and a number of other
Oh, yeah,
programs.
yeah, yeah.
The
Meals
summer,
on Wheels.
yeah, Meals on Wheels and the summertime playground. I think that was something that Dries got off the ground there.
Yeah, yeah,
Summer care for children.
yeah.
We've been at the forefront of some of the social programs in the city.
And you know, when I look back, I remember that first year that I went to the Shriners Pancake Breakfast.
Oh,
And here's all the fellows that used to go down, I think your dad was a part of it, would go down to Shakopee, the lodge in Shakopee.
yeah,
For Blue, Eastern Star
yeah,
and Blue Lodge and stuff. And that's been kind of a way that, you know, Oak Grove is not only involved in the church, but in the community.
mhm,
You know, our members have been on the school board and all these other things that might amount to the land we live in.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what, we talked a little bit about the changes you've seen over the years, increased membership and then decreased in the Sunday school numbers and the fellowship numbers. What other changes have you seen in the 50-plus years that you've been around?
Well, you know, Steve St. Martin and I, we talked about this, that in our growing up, your life was kind of centered on the church.
Mhm.
You have Sunday morning, you have Sunday school, and then you stay for church, and you'd come in the evening for fellowship. You'd have your choir on Wednesday nights, you'd have Women's Association or Ladies' Day, whatever they called it, would meet during the week, and you'd have men's prayer breakfast or a Thursday night prayer meeting. Everything really focused on the church. And I remember, you know, coming here that first couple of years when we'd have the Harvest Festival.
Oh, yes.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah, fond
you know,
memories
we'd
of that.
cook a meal here, we'd serve 800 people, you know, cook 9 or 10 turkeys, and oh my gosh, you know. But, and I remember then during the 60s and 70s when even the schools would not have anything on Wednesday nights,
Mhm.
so that the churches could have
That's
that.
right.
That's all changing now. And there's so much competition for a person's time. And so, and I'm of the era when my wife stayed home. You know, I was the one that did the work, and my wife stayed home with the kids and so forth. And so, you know, we get stuff done now, but it's not like you'd have, you could call and know that so-and-so was always home and
Right.
could help.
Right.
Now, families, it seems as though if there is two in a household, then they're both working.
Right.
And it's, even relationships there. Now, it's nothing for the wife to travel for her job, or, as well as if the husband and stuff. So, there's, the number of demands has changed something. But, now we recognized volunteers on Sunday, and it was still just outstanding to see how many people stood up to it. So people know how to be able to help, even though the times have changed in,
Yes.
in their lifestyles
Yes. I think that's an interesting point,
and stuff.
because we
And-
do still volunteer, we just have to be more creative about
Yeah,
when we
Yeah.
squeeze it in and how we
yeah,
go
yeah.
about it.
And I remember just not too long ago, I had one of the, now, man, he's 48 years old. But he came up to me and he says, you know, we got to thinking the other day, and we think it was remarkable that you and my dad would take a week's vacation and go up to just to be with us at Clearwater.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know, those days when we'd run the whole camp by ourselves and all of our people. Well, things, you know, are changing. Of course,
Yeah.
we also don't have the number of young people that we did
Right.
at that time. That's another thing. But church attendance has taken on a different, you know, it's not, well, you go to church on Sunday. That was kind of when I was first involved.
It was a given.
It was a given.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now it's, you find that working with membership and attendance patterns, you see people have a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is, you know, I remember one man, he says, I'll get there at least once a month, but I work every Sunday. So all of those things impact and then change how things are.
Societal changes.
Yeah.
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 How about for the future now, as you look ahead, if you had a crystal ball, what would you predict, looking ahead, say, 5, 10, 20 years for Oak
Well,
Grove?
I think, you know, one of just some of the things, I think that we will eventually move to the point of having communion every Sunday.
Do you?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It may not be for both services, but there will be communion available. I think the thing that all the denominations are looking at today is this relationship between gay marriage and what is marriage defined, and what is the family defined, you know.
Mhm.
I was just saying the other day that the Wally Cleaver family, Leave It to Beaver of the TV era,
Mhm.
that doesn't exist anymore.
It's pretty rare.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And of course, I see that, you know, working in the schools now.
Mhm.
I often think to myself, what do these youngsters go home to?
Do you see the church having a role in some of these issues with?
Well, you know, here's the thing, and of course, we saw it, you know, in our day, when they thought we were gonna surely go to hell because we were singing "Do Lord." And I think, you know, now we've got, churches are devising their way of handling. The young people want to hear their music. They want their style of worship. They're looking for something different than what we grew up and were accustomed to. So we're going to have to balance that. The older folks are going to have to be more tolerant and patient,
Mhm.
as well as the young people. And so, but then what will a family look like? What will be a family structure? Will it be mom and dad and 2.5 kids and a dog and, you know, no, those are different. I think that whole area, and then with the advent of technology and what we have, electronics, it's changed. You know, we grew up focusing on a minister preaching. Now, with handheld this and handheld that and all these things, the message can come to you in so many different ways, and monitoring that and
Yes.
still making it something that people can grab a hold of.
Mhm. So we may become more of an online, more accessible online,
Yeah.
let's say.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
And so, and then of course, the other area too is we have an aging population. So we're gonna have to figure out some way to take care of that and meet that need. You know, I think about Social Security, for instance. When it was instituted in the mid-30s, early 30s, the average life expectancy was 59. And they said, well, you could work till you're 65. Now, the average life expectancy is 82.
Yeah.
You've got to do something to change your numbers because the aging is different, and if now people are around longer. I often think about, you know, I barely knew my one grandmother. My two granddads died when I was 3 and 4, and there was only one grandma. And she was 20, I was 21 when she died. Now look at how many people have all 4 of their grandparents, and they're in their 30s. So this changing demographics is what we need to be aware how we're gonna handle it. And so-
What do you hope Oak Grove will continue to focus on? What do you hope we'll be doing 5 or 10 or 15 years down the line?
I hope that we continue to have a good balance between our faith and action. That we don't go like some of the churches in our denomination, there's so much social action, I don't know if they ever build on the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to do the things that help us grow our faith, as well as being out there and doing the working things and the serving loaves and fishes. All those things are nice, but what are you doing for the inner self? How is the growth? That's one of the areas that see, Oliver Presbyterian, where I really got more involved. They were more, well, and you maybe remember, I remember when we had a men's Sunday school class and a women's Sunday school class and all those things. I don't want us to get to the point where our only thing that we study is social action things.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I know that I'm kind of excited that the growing deeper.
Yes, that new theme for
New theme thought.
next year.
And that's, for me, that's been the thing that's been a part of my life, is growing my own spiritual life as well as being involved in the other things.
And that continues to be more and more important, I think, the more the world changes. We need it even more perhaps than when we were growing up.
Yeah.
Well,
See, I remember when we started Bethel, it said we were gonna do Bethel, I was aware of the classes. But it was Harley Swigum, Lutheran minister out of Madison, Wisconsin, who said, most churches are biblically illiterate.
mhm.
And I hope we never get away from that point where we continue to study and learn about our faith and our history and our faith.
The foundations.
Yeah. Building blocks. Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, Roger, you and I. Do you have any parting words of wisdom for us before we wrap up our time together?
I think that all of the changes in my life, you know, my losing of my wife and all of the growth, I think of the people that have joined me in the walk and the journey. I remember your dad and your mother, yeah, but I met particularly your dad. Oh, what a sweetheart.
I'm kind of partial to him.
Oh, and it's those things, those relationships that we've had down through the years,
The people.
and that make this a special place.
Yes.
So that when you do wind up and have to go to the hospital or something, it's just the number of people who call you, and not just once. Continue to call and keep track and stuff. I have the most tender spot for that first group of young people, of which you were a part. And what a difference in my life to work with them.
And what a difference you made for us. All these years later, I still can say very definitely that had a very big impact on my life. And one thing I have to tell you, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when I graduated from high school, I remember a phone call from you when I was going off to McAllister College, and I remember you called and said, now I just want you to know, as you're going on this next big adventure in your life, that, you know, I'm still around here, and I'll be willing to help you in any way that I can, and just don't forget, I'm here and I care. And what an important, I mean, I remember that to this day. I can tell you where I was standing in the house when I got that phone call. That's important. That's
Well,
important.
you see, I remember being then at Oliver Church, and I remember then being called into the service. And I remember a man saying to me, here's my card, call me no matter what.
There we are. It's people. The love of God through people.
Yeah,
What better way to end our interview, right?
right.
Thank you, Roger. It's
You're
been
welcome.
a total pleasure.
Well, you know, I just look around and I think of all the things that we did in this room and stuff.
Junior church and everything. Weddings.
And Bill, last year when he was talking at our Heritage Sunday, he said, I remember the windows being open
Yeah,
and you guys singing for junior church.
yeah, that's right.
And we could hear it over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and you guys could sing. Wow.
Well, we sure had a good, some good examples, didn't we?
Oh. Yeah, yeah. Now, Lou DeBono,
Oh, Lou is back. I saw that.
she has said she wants to come
Yeah,
back.
isn't that wonderful?
Wow.
Yeah.
And stuff.
She was
Yeah.
back for Harley's memorial service,
Yeah.
and that, I guess, made her homesick.
Wow. Wow. Well, I remember when
Yeah.
she was, and then she went out to Eden Prairie Church.
Yeah.
And then I remember she asked me to come out there and do the 7 last words and
Oh, did she?
things and stuff, yeah. And so she's had quite a varied background also. And stuff. But just think, 92 years old.
Is she?
Mhm.
Oh, my.
Yeah,
Oh, goodness.
92.
No,
In fact, she was the one, it was Dora Blake who got one of her horses from Lou.
Ah, okay.
And then went on to show that horse
Oh,
and stuff.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
But I do remember now that they had horses. They
yeah.
lived out in the western part of Bloomington or
Yeah,
Eden Prairie
yeah,
or
yeah, out there
something.
by Bush Lake Road,
Yeah.
yeah. She was at Eden Prairie for a long time. But, well, she said it's the young people's ministry that making her look for a place to move.
Oh,
Mhm.
in what way?
Well, she just doesn't like the drums and,
Oh, I
And
see,
all
the
that.
more contemporary.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I wish that I had a better memory, but this fellow was talking about praise songs. Well, that's 17 verses of praise the Lord.
It's a little wearing after a while. Oh, dear.
And yeah, a wonderful example of how the corn is in the meadow, and how if you were to put that into a praise song, the corn is in the meadow, hallelujah, hallelujah. You know, and it was so clever the way.
Oh, dear.